Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're still with you here on RTV International and our continued coverage of the presidential visit, attending a conference in Paris on financing Africa's post-pandemic recovery. African leaders and heads of multilateral lenders are attending the meeting to find ways of financing African economies that have been, of course, hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic. They'll also be discussing the handling of the continent's billions of dollars in debt. The conference will also be tackling the transfer of technology to Africa, as well as the integration of African economies into the global economy, that and much more. And we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Dr. Magdy Saadany, an expert in African affairs. Dr. Magdy, a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you, dear.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Now, Doctor, of course, the President is attending the conference in Paris aimed at financing Africa's post-pandemic recovery. Now, even before the pandemic, Doctor, lots of African countries suffered from financing gaps affecting their ability to join the world's economic development progress. Let's talk a bit about the importance of the summit in addressing these pasts and dealing with the repercussions of the coronavirus pandemic and how this pandemic has really hit African countries hard in terms of their financial affairs.
I think it's at the time that the world looked to Africa, because if we assume that Asia or part of Asia, Europe and the States will be recovering soon from the pandemic, if Africa is left behind, that means everything will be set back another 100 years, because everything coming from Africa. But if you don't mind, I want to read something in between in this summit. Okay, the summit with this noble purposes and targets and agenda, it's okay. But I think there are some messages sent by Egypt in this summit. Some very important message. It's a bit hidden, but for the people who look from far, they can read it. The first message is that within this all turbulence in the area, Egypt would and will not neglect the national obligation toward the Arab nations under no circumstances. Secondly, the message was very strong to Sudan, Sudan nation and Sudan leadership, telling them Egypt always there for them, always take the side of Sudan. And that is a very strong message to whom were playing and still playing to separate the two nation or the two parties of the, if I may call it, the Nile nation, Egypt and Sudan. And also that message telling the other African countries, yes, Egypt is there, also can speak on behalf of them. On the economic level, on whatever level, Egypt will represent the African interest. And the most important is that a message to the European community, telling that Egypt is back in its position, and our gravity in the Arab nation and in the African nations are restored. Also, that goes for the Americans, the American administration, especially the new administration, telling them that it's not only the red and blue play yard. No, there are a lot of play yards. They are European, and I wouldn't surprise if the diplomacy or the Egyptian diplomacy or the Sisi's second stop will be Moscow or PG or maybe Tokyo, because it's moving in every direction, showing that the people, we are not living on the shed of or in the shadow of the state. So, as for Israel, if somebody would ask why I didn't mention. As for Israel, I think the Egyptian message had been delivered already. Firm, strong, clear, and delivered to the right people. Not the propagandas was and still, no. It was delivered in our way, in Sisi way. Good, short, hard, to the top, to the heart of the issue.
And proactive as well,
Yeah, yes, and without showing some, I hate to say that this is a circus. Sisi is not a circus player.
No.
He is managing the thing his way. The other people want to jump and pump and dance and around the circus. Okay, it's up to them. So within the summit in Europe, okay, the total vision is for aiding Africa, but the Egyptian role was very, let's say, effective, clear, and it is in the spot. It's in the heart.
Absolutely.
The people can read this message.
Absolutely.
If they read it well, it's right.
Absolutely. Dr. Magdy, of course, you raised several very important points. Let me move to one of them being the situation in Sudan. As you said, France hosted on Monday the international conference to support Sudan in the transitional period. Now, this is an example of how political stability and economic progress are intertwined and linked. How do you see the decision taken up yesterday helping Sudan in this transitional period, especially those related to writing off some of Sudan's debts, what it owes?
I tell you, see, in the land of Sudan is very rich and very fertile, and there is a lot of weed in the ground, on the floor in Sudan. These weeds has to be taken off the Sudan soil. To take it off, you have to support, let's say, the good farmers, the good people whose main concern is Sudan,
yes,
not a political direction.
Agenda, yes.
And see, in the case, Sudan is a part of Egypt. I'm not talking about a political thing. I'm talking about ties. We had no borders. Those people who made the borders and want to keep it. Now, it is the time to show the people that Sudan, which is the richest country in the continent, which can be number one in most of the wealth that she had, if we support Sudan in the right way, we will put back the stability.
Yes.
And poverty, as Mr. Sisi said many times, there is no safety. There is no safety haven if the people cannot find their daily bread.
Absolutely.
We can support Sudan. We can help them if we remove the bad weeds from the Sudanese soil. We will Sudan in a very short time will be stand back again in its. They have a huge mineral wealth beside the agriculture. You wouldn't believe it. A lot of investment from many countries are depending in Sudan. So if Sudan back to its feet, I think, first it will be good for us because we will have a very strong backbone in the south to us. And at the same time, it will be a buffer to those people who are a bit further in the south, telling them that Egypt and Sudan is a really red line.
Absolutely. Dr. Magdy, one final question, if I may, sir. Today's summit will be trying to find or fill in financing shortfalls of almost $300 billion in Africa, caused, of course, by the coronavirus pandemic. Tell me a bit about what are the priorities, in your opinion, Doctor? What are the priorities now? Where should these funds be directed at, and how do you see this shortfall being sustainably filled?
If we want to get back in our feet, we need to work.
Yes.
We need to create jobs, okay? And that will not be possible if we cannot find back the pandemic. So it's very important to fight the pandemic first. So I think the first step should be done by the European community, by the WHO, by Europe, by everyone, is to fight the pandemic by vaccination. And I would not accept any other way except vaccination for every single person in the continent to have the vaccination, not waiting for the others when they finish and they start with Africa. No. If Africa feels sick, the world will die. So they have to feed all the mouths in Africa by jobs. Jobs cannot be created unless they work. Work is impossible on when we have a pandemic. So we have to concentrate on vaccination as priority number one.
Absolutely. Right. Dr. Magdy Saadany, expert in African affairs. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and your insight. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and we'll be right back to continue our coverage here on LTV International. Stay tuned.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi meets with world leaders.
أعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة